Hi, and thanks for joining this episode of The Blade Boys. I'm Ted Flett.
And I'm at Das.
And Myth, it's the end of the season. Lots to talk about in terms of breaking down. I know,
It's
mm,
sad.
single teardrop,
It'll be
but
back next
so
year.
much.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll do it all again next year. But there was so many ups and downs in Boston, so lots to debrief, and then a little bit about Spokane and what happened at the World Team Challenge Cup or whatever the hell that thing's
Yeah,
called.
that
I
new
don't
girl. It's called the
Cosette.
ISU trying to make more money. Okay, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
right? Like that's okay. We
totally.
don't blame them. Promote the sport of
Yeah, hey.
figure skating. That's what we like. Um,
The more figure skating, the better. In fact, don't even take an off season. Just forget stars on ice. Just keep competing right through the summer. I
right.
would totally be
More
down with that.
quads, more competitions. It'll be great. The skaters will be
Complete.
skaters will be worn out by July. It'll be great.
Yeah, totally. They'll be like totally drained, and they'll be doing like single sow cows by the time Pyeongchang
Oh,
comes
girl.
around.
So then I can actually compete with them. Okay, so.
Hello, I'm getting in on that. We'll be a pair.
But we'll do Paris, yes. But
So
baby
so yeah
steps.
so so lots to talk about. Shall we? Why don't we go in the order of the medals and how they were handed out in Boston? So we'll start with ice dance. Now, when I look back at what my predictions were, as you might recall, I was predicting Weaver and Poja to upset the French to come second, and the Shibutanis to come third. Yeah, I wasn't quite spot on with that.
my,
What were your predictions again,
my
Myth? I forget.
predictions were the French to defend the world title, the Shibutanis to come second, and Weaver and Poje to come third. Now, I almost put, and this is, yes, obviously in retrospect I can say this right now, but I almost put Chalk and Bates over Weaver and Poje because I'm like, oh, in the States, they'll clearly, like, Weaver and Poje and Chalk and Bates and Capolini and Lenotte are so neck and neck that, like, it's going to come down to, like, who the judges like more. And I'm like, well, it's home ice, but I didn't think that necessarily, the U.S. would get away with getting two ice dance medals out of there. I thought
Yeah,
Weaver and Poja would skate strong enough. And honestly, if they had skated to their potential, as they've done previously in the season, they probably would have gotten that bronze medal. But I can happily say that like I'm so happy for Chalk and Bates, and I think they of the three who were like gunning for that bronze medal because I think the Shibs had it at that point, the silver medal. Of the three gunning for bronze, Chalk and Bates really delivered and showed why they are podium worthy, at least in this competition. So
yeah. See, and I wasn't like as you know, I was there. I was covering the event for Golden Skate, which was fantastic, and seeing Chalk and Bates free dance again live, it just for me it just left me cold. Well, that's a bit dramatic. I mean, it wasn't as their dance was, but I wouldn't say it left me cold, but it never really grabbed me. I didn't care about their skate as much as I did, the French, the Shibutanis, or Weaver Poge. I don't know. I mean, I don't see Chalk and Bates as being able to maintain this sort of medal contention level going into the Olympics. I think that other teams are gonna creep up on them. I think the Italians, frankly, I thought the Italians skated better than them. Weaver and Poge had problems on the Twizzles, but I think that the depth of their free dance was stronger than Chalk and Bates, which I think that wrong was kind of righted at the World Team Challenge. But I think you're right. It's kind of this pack now that's fighting for the bronze medal because the Shibutanis have really broken away, and of course the French are now in a class of their own, setting a new world record. I mean, surpassing in their second World Championships, surpassing Davis and White's free dance record. That's unbelievable.
not even second world champion, like second competition of this season. Like they basically were like Euros world record at the Worlds. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there was no holding back for them. And as soon as I saw like the judges' scores that were being given to some of the earlier teams, I'm like, girl, Christmas came early at the Worlds in Boston because
Totally.
these judges are giving some component scores and some GOE that's like top level. And um, okay, to be fair, the French team totally earned their world title. They were, I don't want to say
Yeah,
by far, but I thought they were for sure the strongest. I actually preferred the Shibutani's free dance more, but I think technically the French Their skating ability and their respect for the ice, as we've talked about, is so pure and so what ice dance really needs to sort of break away from kind of stuff that Chalk and Bates were doing, like more classical, more dramatic stuff. I mean, it's hard to say that like if they really deserved the world record because I thought that they actually skated a bit tentatively. Like Gabriella had some kind of tense moments in that free dance, but of course there's no denying that they deserved the win. But the Shibutanis, they also killed it. Like that short dance was awesome. And that's what sort of it kind of reminded me of like the short dance that like not in terms of theme, but like the short dance of Virtue and Moyer in 2010 at the Olympics, where it's like, man, is it going to be Virtue and Moyer or Davis and White? Just like, is it going to be the Shibutanis or is it going to be Chalk and Bates or Weaver and Poja? And that to me, like that short dance cemented that like, hey, we're here, we're staking our claim to the silver medal. And of course, in the free dance, I think they knew and they had the confidence that like, man, our free dance has been received so well this season. We are gaining so much momentum. We're getting all our levels, which is like technically the Shibutanis are like essentially the top of the pack for me, even in some cases more than the French. The French in terms of expression and I guess originality and like sentiment definitely is above the rest of the field, but the Shibutanis in terms of technique and excitement really stood out for me. And it goes to show like last year they weren't on the podium and this year they are. So you never know about that middle pack, that middle ground. Like Weaver and Poja won the Grand Prix final with the Shibs in fourth, right? Yeah. And now, right, Weaver and Poja, I mean, I'm going to talk about them for a second because that was, okay, first of all, this Worlds was kind of a bust for Canada in general, and except for Paris, which we will get to, which was very much not a bust for all the teams. Right. But for ice dance, unfortunately, Gilles and Poirier and Weaver and Poja both dropped in the standings. They barely managed to hang on to like 3 spots. Paradis and Roulette were like
they didn't even qualify for the free dance.
They didn't qualify for the free dance, which was a huge disappointment because I thought they were completely shortchanged on components and rate of execution by the judges. It was below their season's best, and I felt bad because it's their first Worlds, and you never want to go to your first Worlds and not even make the free dance.
But and like, their free dance is lovely. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate they weren't able to skate it.
Yeah, but and well, also with Virtue and Moyer coming back next year, like you would have wanted that opportunity, right? Where chances are it'll be Gilles and Poirier, Virtue and Moyer, and Weaver and Poja in some sort of order. But Paradis and Roulette are still definitely an exciting team, and they're up and coming. And I hope that they gain ground on the rest of the top Canadian teams who have established themselves on the world level next. I mean, who knows? Papadakis and Cizeron came from 13th to 1st, so you never know. Like ice dance is not as predictable as it used to be, but. Yeah, about Weaver and Poja, it was very disappointing when they put themselves in medal contention. I think, as I said, they would have gotten a medal had they skated to their potential, and they were clearly very disappointed. I think moving forward, they need to stop trying to do this artsy thing, this like cerebral, like abstract stuff. That's, to me, the French have a stranglehold on that, and they do it better. And as long as the French do it better, Weaver and Poja will always kind of be second fiddle to them. I mean, we're excited to see what the French have to come up with next year. I mean, it really depends on the vehicles you choose during the season. That's why like Chalk and Bates struggled this season, and that's why the Shibutanis did so well because they chose perfect pieces for the season. But like Weaver and Poja, they need to like they have it. Their strength is their intensity and their contrast between like him like and her, and being able to sell passion and being able to sell like just like full on sex appeal and like just like that intensity that you really can't get from teams that are more I guess physically evenly matched, like the French team or brother and sister teams, right, like the Shibutanis, that you wouldn't get that like it reminds me of their Paso Doble from a couple seasons back, that like the other teams can't do that, and I think Weaver and Poje need to harness that type of performance, and that
Right.
way they will distinguish themselves from the other teams in the competition.
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly what Weaver and Poje, what exactly they need to do. I mean, I think we talked earlier in the season about this being a great season for teams to try something different and sort of move out of their comfort zone, and then maybe go back to what is their strongest sell in the run up towards the Olympics, and then of course the Olympic Games. So, for example, I mean, Virtue and Moyer, when they pulled out Carmen, in the season before the Olympic Games, and then they went back to sort of their more comfortable style program for Sochi to sell what they're best at. So in that respect, I like and appreciate the fact that Weaver and Poje chose Bitter Earth,
Something
and it was
different,
something different to
I agree. This
to
was an
set themselves
experimental
apart.
season.
Yeah,
It's
but
an
I think
experimental season, yeah.
I think you're right. I think the intensity between them is, it can be really good once it's matched. I think Caitlin can be super intense, and Andrew, doesn't always reach to that level, or sometimes it seems a bit forced. But I think you're right. Their Passe Doble last season was
Oh my God.
sensational,
That's
the
ice on
yeah,
fire,
and their tango free dance in Sochi was also the Olympic season was also excellent. So. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I really thought Weaver and Poje were going to turn it on after Four Continents kind of recalibrated them. And I mean, as my prediction said, I thought they were going to win it. I really, and I thought going into this season, it was going to be the Canadians versus the French. Like, those would be the top teams. But does this ever? I mean, the Shibutanis' ascent to the top in U.S. and then Four Continents really shows that there are two halves of a season, and you can really put the pedal to the metal in the second half of the season, and enjoy glory at the Worlds. It's
and it goes.
I had the opportunity to ask Weaver and Poje after their free dance. This is the second time this has happened now that they've come out just guns blazing at the top of the season. They even scrapped their short dance and chose something more favorable that would appeal to the judges more, and it was winning their favor. And their short dance was really gaining momentum. And then to fall short and even slip off the podium here, and at that time they were still getting their heads around it. But they certainly did recognize that there's a difference between how they compete at the beginning of the season and how they compete in the second half, and learning to carry that momentum over, or maybe save their best performances for the back half of the season, is something that they'll look at and focus on going forward.
Yeah, and that's the key. The key clearly is momentum, and the Shibutanis rode their wave of momentum, and unfortunately a competition like Four Continents broke Weaver and Poje's momentum, and that's why I had predicted they wouldn't do as well at Worlds. I thought they would actually bring out their best. I didn't think they would make mistakes, but it just seemed like there wasn't that comfort level with this free dance and with this team that they exhibited earlier in the season. And I mean, what they need to do is they need to step back and say, hey, we won the Grand Prix final. We were the best team in the world this season, at some point. So we clearly have the capability. Now we need the right vehicles, and now we need to just tighten up and polish and not let silly mistakes really compromise your momentum. And that's the heartbreaking part of the ice dance. You make one silly mistake or one thing, it drops you in the standings, and in the judges' eyes, when everyone's so close at the top, immediately that's okay, well, now you're fourth tier even though you were first yesterday. It's not like in past years where if Davis and White or Virtue and Moore had made a mistake, they'd still be one of the top two teams. Now it's so tight at the top that unless you're absolutely pristine, there are teams who are hungry to just not even wait until the end of the season or next. They will do it in the next competition, and they will and it comes down to levels, it comes down to polish, it comes down to finessing and key moments in a program, and that really differentiates the top champions from the people who are striving to get there. And
Yeah.
it's a very exciting time for ice dance.
And speaking of a couple teams that are striving to get there that I was super impressed with at the World Championships, Gillies and Poirier making the top 5 after the short dance and getting level 4s on every element in the short dance. That's amazing.
Great surprise. I loved it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm certain they were disappointed that they didn't qualify for the Grand Prix final after skating there last season. Their third place at Skate America, and then coming second at Trophy Eric Bompard, wasn't quite enough. I think with the foreshadowing of Virtue and Warrior coming back, I think it probably is in the back of the mind of a team like like Gillies and Poirier of, okay, how will this affect us next season and so forth. And I think coming 5th and being right there in the top pack after the short dance was fantastic. And they made some changes to their short dance to try and put their best foot forward, and it worked. I'm really excited to see what they'll do next year. And also Hubble and Donahue. Fantastic team. This is my biggest nerve about Meryl and Charlie possibly coming back next season, is that based on the standings now, it would bump that team off the world, off the world team or the Olympic team, which would be, I think, tragic, because they are fantastic. I loved their short dance and their free dance this season. I even liked their free dance with her wings. I know that there was a lot of there's a lot of chatter on discussion boards and social media that they were a bit much. She parted with the wings. She let those things drop.
She let them fly away. So.
She sure did. But I mean, I love that free dance, and I can't wait to see what they'll be coming out with next year. But great scores for them at the Worlds as well. That show that they're part of that middle pack that's also going to be in the hunt for the bronze medal.
Yeah, and. Even at Four Continents, you saw they were actually kind of close to Weaver and Potter. So it's an exciting time for ice dance, and I think next season we're really gonna this was the experimental season, and I think next season we're gonna see some very interesting programs, because now teams are really gonna be striving to distinguish themselves and set themselves apart.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. So this was I thought this was a great Worlds. Congratulations to the States. Getting 2 world medals, and of course to France, Papadakis and Cizeron, for after that concussion to start the season, to come back, just be whatever. It's like we never left. I always say it's not a comeback if you skate like you never left, right? And they skated like they never left the ice. They skated brilliantly at Euros. They nailed these performances at Worlds. So. Félicitations to those
Très bien
to the French team.
It's funny because you said earlier that this Worlds was a bit of a bust for Canada, and in terms of the Canadian entries, it wasn't fantastic across the board as we might have hoped.
Yeah.
But do you notice 3 of the World Championship winners all train in Canada? So the French, Javier, and Duhamel Radford. So
we're doing something right. We got the right location. Now we just need
everyone
just skaters.
Everyone wants that Canadian touch to take them to the top. And speaking of which, in the men's event, Javier Fernandez. Wow, I mean, how do you sum up a performance like that? I mean, that was a absolute brilliant, lights out, long program that blew the roof off. The risk of sort of jumping ahead of assessing the entire skate or the entire event, I am so proud and happy for Javier Fernandez.
You're happy for Javi?
Happy for Javi. He was slotted as, silver medalist at best, and he brought he brought his absolute A game. I was absolutely blown away. I'm so impressed with that guy. That was, he was foot perfect as far as I could see in that free skate.
In the free skate, yeah.
Yep. And almost rivaled Yuzuru's score. Personally, I thought, a clean, a clean program by Yuzuru this year to his Warrior program, and a clean Guys and Dolls Javier. I preferred Javier. I mean, I thought it was more toe tapping. It's easier to get into the program. You're excited for him. He picks up so many nuances of that music. The choreography by David Wilson is brilliant.
It brought out the best in Javier's skating.
Yep.
And I am so happy for Javier as well. I think, as you said, a lot of people pegged him for second place at best, including us. And to be honest, on paper, Javier, when Yuzuru does well, he's very, very difficult to beat, including by people like Javier. However, Javier like absolutely like smashed his personal best, and even Yuzuru at his like best would have, it would have been close. It wouldn't have been like a complete runaway as some expected it to be if Yuzuru was on, but clearly Yuzuru wasn't on, and Javier capitalized. Javier still had a really like yes a fall in the short program. Okay, let's talk about that for a second because like the score to get that type of score, what was it like 97 or 98 or something with the fall like that's, I mean, come on, but like the judges should have not given component scores to both Javier and Patrick Chan as we'll talk about for their performances in their short program. But the free program, he absolutely nailed it. That's the best I've ever seen him skate. I mean, we all know that. He upped his technical game. He opted to like compete with instead of just kind of resigning himself to like, okay, well, user is probably going to win. He like came out hungry and last year I think a couple of people thought his world title was just kind of like, oh, Hanyu he didn't skate his best, blah 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 blah. And Javier, like, he wasn't great, like his best either, but he did enough to win. This year, he said he's like, you know what, there is more than one person at the top of this podium in terms of like, a world champion threat and going into the Olympics. He is a name to still be reckoned with. And I think even a team like Duhamel and Radford, who we'll talk about later, was people kind of didn't think of it as a fluke winning last year, but they're like, oh, well, it's probably not going to happen this year because, other teams, they're like gaining momentum and they've done so well this year that, and they have, like, it's hard to defend a world title. And Javi showed so much poise, but I felt bad for Hanyu as well because he had that amazing short program, another flawless short program from him this year, and he established a 12-point lead, and you thought he would be untouchable with that kind of lead and with his technical content in his free skate. But of course, in his free skate, it was not like it was. Going back to that momentum thing. Japanese nationals wasn't particularly solid for him.
Yeah.
So coming into Worlds, you wonder if his Seimei free skate had peaked at NHK and the Grand Prix final. But who cares? Whatever. He still had amazing competitions this season. And I know you think Guys and Dolls is better than Seimei. I actually find Seimei to be more exciting. I find Guys and Dolls to be very charming and has a lot of nice details. But Seimei has a great build to it. And that's what I love about that program. Unfortunately, though, when you don't hit the elements, like it doesn't have that same impact. But I mean, Hanyu, he still broke 300 points even with.
Oh yeah, it's still an incredible skater,
right?
And I think there's a funny dynamic happening where Yuzuru is killing it at the Grand Prix final, and then Javier is eclipsing him at the World Championships because Yuzuru just can't repeat what he's able to do earlier in the season. And it sort of harkens back to the old rivalry between Michelle Kwan and Irina Sutskaya. I mean, Irina Sutskaya couldn't lose a Grand Prix final even if she tried.
Yeah.
And it sort of became
except Tamao Asada, but we won't talk about that one. Okay?
Yeah, true. Except that Michelle was sort of she wouldn't skate great, but she'd always claim the silver, and she was like, "It's okay, girl, you have that gold at Grand Prix final. I'll take it at the World Championship." So Javier's like, you know what? Knock yourself out. Enjoy enjoy your Grand Prix final championship. I'm taking it at Worlds. I'm taking the big glory. So I mean, who knows? I think that. It'll be interesting to see how Yuzuru approaches this season because this has now happened twice in a row. He goes back to skate and train in Japan after the Japanese, or he stays in Japan after the Japanese nationals, and apparently only communicates, through a weekly email or sort of touch base with Coach Brian Orser. That might be something he wants to revisit because he skates better in the front, in the front half of the season when he's, with Brian as opposed to the back half. I think it's a pretty unorthodox approach to, well, it's not. I don't think it is an unorthodox, if I can even say that, approach to training and coaching. And you wonder if it's really paying the dividends that it needs to, and if there's going to be a bit of a reassessment of that arrangement going forward. Although, I mean, he's still a relatively young guy, and to be living in Canada and away from your family, your culture, your friends, your circle. I mean, I certainly like the idea of it, and it's something, for example, that Javier doesn't even really have an option. I mean, is there even a rink in Spain, for crying out loud? So
there should be the Javier Fernandez skating rink, or whatever it's called.
Training center, but
my Spanish isn't that good. So El Rink de Javier Fernandez. Sí.
El Rinco.
El Rinco, yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see next year if the schedule changes in terms of how much time Yuzuru spends in Japan versus how much time he spends back in at the training base in Toronto.
I think he'll start amping it up as we're going into the Olympics. He'll start getting a little more serious. Not that this year wasn't more serious. I mean, he upped his technical game already. He'll probably add the quad loop next season to give himself an even greater technical advantage over the field. But speaking of adding quads, he's gonna have to do that because there are quite a few up and coming quadsters, including the bronze medalist Boyang Jin, who first medal for the man in China,
for a Chinese man.
First medal for China. I was already thinking about Cheng Jiang Li in my head, and I wasn't even finishing my sentence. First medal for Chinese men at Worlds. Congratulations, Mr. Boyang Jin. And of course, with
he skated to that bronze medal more easily than you just described. The historical feat they did. But fist pump, girl, you got it. You finally got it together.
Got it together. But kudos to Boyang. I mean, again, he didn't skate as well as he did at say 4 continents, but still he managed to pull 270 points and the upset not the upset bronze medal. I think everyone knew that if he skated to his potential, he would always be a bronze medal threat. Maybe even silver if one of the other two had a really disastrous day, but I mean, clearly the points don't show that. But Boyang still, his first time at Worlds, come on, getting a bronze medal, good for you. Seriously, that is some impressiveness, and that'll definitely give him some confidence going into next season. He was also another skater who builded throughout the season. Each program, his quads would get a little bit more secure, a little cleaner. 4 continents, I think he might have peaked just a bit early, but whatever. It's better to have a clean competition at least once a season. You want that, especially when you've got 6 quads. I mean, come on. And his free skate was actually really, really good in Worlds, and even his short program. There was the Let's Combo issue, but all in all, it was a really strong competition and a really great statement. And if he improves his artistry next season, which can only get better, then he can really become a legitimate threat coming up to the 2018 Olympics. But it's also a matter of man, those quads must take a toll on his body. So I hope he holds up because he will be a very exciting skater to watch, and especially if his artistry develops and he manages to not just make it about the quad, which his programs very clearly are. He will definitely be a threat, and that's why skaters like Yuzuru and Javier are upping their technical game. And we even have the 4th place finisher Mikhail Kolyada from Russia. We didn't think that the Russians would place this high, but Kolyada, he arguably should have even won bronze. I mean, he did phenomenal. He skated essentially as well as he could have. He skated an earlier flight, so he didn't get the component score. He's a newbie on the scene, so again, he's not getting the same component scores, but he did awesome. Kudos to him on making 4th in his first Worlds and really establishing himself as one of the top Russians, if not the top Russian. I mean, Maxim Kovtun, just did not have the competition that he's capable of, but thankfully, Kolyata
But I think
stepped up.
there's a lot more ease to Kolyata's jumps and his quad
Oh my God, his triple
than
axles are
Kostan's.
his triple
They're
axles are
gorgeous.
gorgeous.
He's so similar to Ilya Kulik. I think. I
Yeah,
mean,
even
I feel like
physically, yeah.
it's like you're looking at the
Those
exact same
machines.
skater. His jumping style is so similar, and even looks like him. I'm waiting for those wings from the Icarus wings costume. Probably is going to come out
Or
next year or something.
keep those giraffe spots away from it.
Yeah,
It
totally.
might
Help
be in
out.
a gold medal winning program, but it ain't
Yeah.
a gold medal winning look. Okay,
Totally, and you did Nightmare Before Christmas. Like,
right.
there's no Adam's Family or Aladdin. Like, it's time to like step up the maturity of your game. Don't totally fall in Ilya's footsteps.
Well, I think that's why the Nightmare Before Christmas worked for him because it was quirky, like kind of like it was deliberately unrefined. So
Yep.
it's like, oh, this matches me as a skater. It's kind of more like I don't have to be as finesse or as sophisticated in this program.
Right.
But I think next season he's gonna like bring a level of sophistication to his programs if they're smart, like if his coach and which I know they are because technically he's very talented and I'm sure he's got another quad coming up already. I mean, the season before he was injured and didn't show his potential, so to come back this season and do as well as he has is a really great statement. Of course,
Yeah.
we have to talk about Patrick Chan, and I mean before we get too like down on ourselves, and yes, it was. I know Patrick, even though he says it was like a comeback thing and he's just kind of like building or whatever. He wanted to be on that podium. Especially after that short program where even in spite of the axle error, he still set himself up. Finally had one of his better international programs. I mean, he cracked 90.
Yep.
I think that was possible. Yeah, I think that was his best international score this season in the short program. And he really set himself up for that bronze medal. And if not for he had an awful free skate. I mean, that's something he just needs to put out of his mind. It was such a contrast to that amazing free skate at Four Continents, and it just wasn't his day. And you can tell he just didn't feel or look comfortable on the ice. And this is just something that he needs to put behind him. I mean, the struggle was real throughout that entire program, and I think next season he just needs to be more confident in himself and just really ride that wave of confidence. I feel sometimes he gets in his head and makes silly errors like even if he had like tripled some of his like pop jump, like he would have at least given the judges consideration to
well, because he was pretty close. I mean, when you look at the total scores, I think there was only about a 6 or 7 point spread between third
points.
and 6th or 7th. Like, it was all really tight. So Shoma Uno, Kolyata, Chan,
Adam Rapon,
Jin, Adam Rapon, like they were all really tight in that pack. So, if he'd been able to squeeze out a bit more, it might have gone better for him. I think, when you talk about, pre-Olympics, the whole talk of Chanflation seems to be a thing of the past, that he's not given the component score gifting that some people thought he was given in previously, or others have stepped up their game, and so people know now how to pick up those component scores, and they're not making some of those silly errors like doubling, like, hey, triple whatever you can. If you 2-foot it, or if it's a bit of a wonky landing, so be it. You've gotten your 3 rotations, and so you're right. He was making some unfortunate errors. He didn't feel comfortable. He did say after the fact that the ice wasn't great and it didn't give him a lot of give. He was the very last person to skate. It was pretty chewed up.
After 12 skaters, and to be fair, that is a point. Like, I think he was just explaining that he was feeling uncomfortable. I don't think he was seeing it as an excuse. Like, it would be a pretty lame excuse, honestly, especially after like 2 or 3 skaters before Javier killed it with a perfect program. So it's kind of like, you can't be like. But I think for him, though, he has a certain comfort level with the ice, and he is one of those skaters that is very one with the ice, and not one of those skaters like Jin, who, even if he's clearly uncomfortable, which I think Jin was in his program,
he'll crank it.
Jin will still crank out those quads. But I think Patrick has a comfort level that, and it's very much in here. And honestly, I think that first quad tripling it, it's like, oh my God, now what do I do with my program to make sure I don't Zayak my next combination and to make sure I don't, like, and after that triple was so I think in his own head, it just threw a wrench into everything because at that point it's like I've been hit with Zayak calls early this season and been negated points, and what does this mean for the rest of the program? And this ice
Yeah.
isn't how I'm like it isn't at my comfort level. So already you're mentally and then it's like and now I still have 4 minutes of a program that I need to complete at Worlds. Like there's a lot of pressure and like I don't think Patrick's the type to make excuses, but I also think that we can see why he didn't deliver the best program that he is capable of. That being said, of course, he did deliver an amazing program at Four Continents. Came back to win it against Jin, who skated completely. So Patrick's in it, and I think that's what he needs to take. And that he did say that's kind of my takeaway. It's nice to know that I can still compete with the top guys. The expectations were particularly high on him after like beating Hanyu at Skate Canada and winning Four Continents. I think a lot of people had written him off to be an automatic off the podium finisher, but I mean he was 4 points from third. I don't think people expected that. So I mean, kudos to you, Patrick. We're still really proud of you for your season, and we know that next year, he's gonna try to add that quad sock out, and he's gonna he now knows he can complete a program with 2 quads and 2 triple axels. So now that hurdle has been completed, and he will definitely be watching that performance to see like how he can replicate that day in his mind. Now he can move to the next step of like he's like, okay, yes, I've added that second axle. Now I can add that quad in, and this was a comeback season. Let's not forget that. So next year he will have had like this season under his belt, and I think he won't have the nervousness or the sort of pressure, self-inflicted expectations on him, and he can just. And it's still a season before the Olympics. Like he still has some time. So So I think that, and he's still one of the best. The others have caught up in terms of components. I mean, Patrick still ends up getting component scores. Him and Javier were getting component scores that were crazy high in spite of errors in a short program. Shame on you judges. But he's still
magnificent.
Of, executing.
And he's still a magnificent skater that even despite the errors, the components and his transitions are exquisite. Another unfortunate, disappointing performance was by Shomo Uno, who was in it certainly after the short program, but then errors in the long program caught up with him. He was pretty disappointed and
also
quite sad.
Also his first Worlds, though. We need to remember that. And we
True,
also
but after the medal at the Grand Prix final, I think he was completely in there. He was a contender, given the strength that he's had this season. And he's probably looking and think, okay, this is also Boyang Jin's first Worlds, and he was able to ascend to the podium. That could have been me quite easily. So I think another skater, in addition to Patrick Chan, will be Shoma Uno, who can step away from the Worlds and think, okay, what do I need to do differently? How can I approach this competition and in order to succeed? And he's got a lot of strengths. Certainly, I think he's got that low hanging free skate or free leg on his jumps.
I feel like it grazes the ice, but not.
Oh my gosh!
It's like he knows. He's like, oh well, I'm just gonna be 1.5 millimeters above the ice with my blade. It's like I don't know how his body awareness can keep his free leg close to. And it's so controlled, and it's so very obviously not touching the ice, but it's like
but
it's
sometimes
so
it does.
Close to it, right?
Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does, and he does he does basically a lunge exit out of his jumps. I think he needs to lift that damn skate so that it's. I mean, I think if judges start to question, did it touch? Did it not touch? It's going to affect his grade of execution marks, which I think he wants to try and avoid. But I can see
some judges will see a 2-footed landing and then still give positive grade of execution. So
this is true. I can see you're on you're on the edge of your seat.
I am on the edge. You know what I'm going to talk about.
What is it? Do you want to talk about a certain quad flip or something?
What? Girl, I am quad flipping out, okay, right now, because Mr. Shoma Uno might have had not the Worlds he was looking for, but he done had the team challenge, whatever. We'll never get the name of that. The challenge, that other competition that
Yeah.
just happened.
Something in Spokane. Let's call it
Something
that.
in Spokane, the Challenge Cup. He landed the first quad flip, not just in the short program, but in the free program as well. And he's like, oh, I'm kind of 50-50 on this. And he's like, he pulls a Boyang Jin and he's like, yeah, I'm 50-50 on my quad luts. Oh, I'm just going to land it in both programs. And that was magnificent to see. I mean, who tries a quad flip after the season, like after the hardest competition in the season? And you know he was wondering, he's like, damn, why didn't I try that at Worlds? Like, why couldn't I do that at Worlds?
Yeah,
Because, of course,
totally.
his score was, like, absolutely monstrous, almost broke 200 points. But kudos to him for doing that.
Well, and you know what? And I don't want, you know, I find it so easy to disagree with you on so many occasions, Myth, as we so often do. But, you know, but in response to that, I mean, I think actually, you know, Chan wasn't there, Javier wasn't there, Yuzuru wasn't there. It might have been the perfect time. Like, the pressure's off.
Yeah.
You know, you might as well crank it out now and see if you're able to land it, because you know there's not a whole lot riding on it. And I would say, you know, test run succcussful.
Right?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Oh,
when you figure Jin's got the Lutz,
Hanyu's gonna have the loop.
Yes. Javier or Yuzuru?
Yuzuru has the loop, yeah. In exhibitions, but like,
totally.
whatever.
I mean, I know he didn't land it. I'm pretty sure, though, Daisuke Takahashi won the World Championships in 2010 with the flip. It was two-footed.
It was under-rotated and two-foot. It wasn't a close attempt, but he still definitely deserves to win that World, because other than that, and I'm so glad, because like that man should not have retired without a World Championship. Like, that would have been a travesty if Daisuke Takahashi never landed. A travesty. But I'm so glad that Shoma landed it and made a little history. I think he apparently, like, off the ice, he's still like very shy and stuff like that. But when he gets on the ice, he like turns it on and is like, whatever, I'm gonna make history. I'm gonna do whatever. And I love his coach too. His coach looks like she's, you know, not one of those.
She's equally,
like she looks so like emotionally invested, and like just a really like keeps him grounded and keeps him like so in a right place. So that was great to see from Shoma.
I'll say three things, because I saw him at the Grand Prix. I was able to see way too many skating competitions this year, but I saw him at Trophy Eric Bompard, I saw him at the Grand Prix final, and then I saw him at Worlds. Three things: he is very shy, he's very small. Like, they're all small. He is teeny tiny small. Like, he's like Madura Ito small. So small.
Watch out for those boards, okay?
And yeah, totally. And the media they go completely berserk for him in a different way. Like, there's a different energy. Of course, the media follows Yuzuru because he's Yuzuru and
he's established. And
they've known, yeah.
Uno's the up-and-comer.
Uno is like, he's absolutely the up-and-comer. He's the next big guy. He's kind of like the Mawasada in 2006 towards 2010 when...
Or the Miki Ando of like...
Miki Ando was sort of the established one, and then Mawasada arrived, and it was like, oh my God, look at this one. I think there's so much buzz. And so there's this little guy, right? Little tiny Shoma Uno who walks around, quite shy, and he's got like 50 media and cameras and recorders like just swarming him. It's quite unbelievable. So yeah.
So I'm very excited to see what he does next season. I just want to quick one note, and that's to Nam. And okay, I don't want to talk about this too much, because like clearly Nam, his body is like fighting him, and like in retrospect, obviously given how Nam did, Liam probably should have gone to Worlds, but also given the short programs that Nam has done this season and the short programs Liam's done, on paper it was the right decision to send to have Nam there, because he clearly had a better potential to make the free skate. I mean, Liam wouldn't have made the free skate with any of his short programs internationally this season either, so it's hard to say if he would have done much better, but Nam clearly did not bring his best for Worlds, and that along with Paris du Roulette, that was another reason why like this was kind of really disappointing. So at least Patrick was able to like maintain 2 spots, which I think we all knew like was a very good chance of happening. But man, like I felt awful for Nam, and now he switched coaches from Brian Orser, so it'll be interesting to see how that affects him going into next season. I still believe in Nam, and I still think he has so much potential. But of course, like when your body is fighting you, like
Well, and this, the coaching change signals to me, is it just that his body is changing and he's finding it hard to keep up, or was there something, bigger and going on? Because you can work through, the growth and puberty and so forth, but going to Glenn Watts, Polina Edmonds' coach, might signal that, not everything was good and well at the Brian Orser training camp. Just
yeah.
saying,
And
just wondering.
sometimes you need the change, and of course, Brian has like Yuzuru and Javier as well that he's focusing on, and it's juggling a lot of like really great like male skaters, and maybe Nam felt that it was time for a change. Honestly, when you have a season that was not as great as Nam's, then
Yeah.
even if your coach, you have an amazing relationship with them, even if everything's going up to speed, sometimes it's like you just have to make a change. And I don't think there was bad blood between them. I think Nam is a very hard worker, and Brian is a very mature coach in that like they would never have any like there wouldn't be like a ton of drama, but I don't know. I hope Nam can come back next season because I think he still has a ton of potential and a ton of like career left in him. Like
Oh yeah, he's so young.
I ain't writing off Mrs. Spicy just yet. Okay.
Gotcha. And I'm going to just say quickly that the American team,
Yes.
Max Aaron and Adam Rapon, those were amazing skates.
Especially Adam.
It's
Yeah.
too bad Max Aaron wasn't able to, the placements weren't a bit more favorable to allow a 3-member American team next year. But, there it be. I thought Adam Rapon's free skate was like sensational.
Yeah.
He was just soaking up that American audience like I have never seen. Well, I mean, we saw it at US Nationals when he skated lights out. His components, his ease on the ice, his comfort with that, with the Beatles program it was fantastic. I cannot wait to see what material he comes out with next year.
Yeah.
Of course, it goes without saying quad, and he doesn't have them, or they're not consistent, and so forth. Yes, I still think his skating is fantastic, and I think Max Aaron is also on the right path. Of course, he has the quads, but maybe not quite the components and the finesse of some of those other top skaters. I really hope that will come because
But
I think he can be a contender too.
He still won a Grand Prix, first man in like ages to like win Skate America. So like there is some positives that the U.S. men can take throughout the season, and I know some people gonna be hating on Patrick Chan for like denying U.S. men like that. People are like, oh, it was so close or whatever. I mean, come on, guys, like it's ordinals at the end of the day, and yeah, it could come down to like one being ahead of another, but like. The U.S. men should just be proud of how they've done, and Adam should be super proud of like getting that accomplishment at Worlds and really nailing his program in front of like home ice crowds. And Max also, he didn't have the best second half of the season, so good for him for like ending on a pretty strong note. And that was the men's competition, and I thought it was a great men's competition with the unexpected win of Javier and amazing skate, amazing short program by Hanyu, amazing free program by Javier, and of course Jin with all his quads. Like it makes next season so interesting, and I can't wait for the man's next season. But we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait to see. But we always have that clip of that quad flip. Okay, so that'll get me through the summer. Okay.